Today on Locked On Red Wings, the Admirals spoiled Danielson's pro debut as the Griffins are routed in Game 2.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a former producer of 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And on today's episode, guys, we're going to pretty simply break down the game between the Griffins and the Admirals. Did not turn out very well for the Griffins, unfortunately, but Nate Danielson debuted. We got to talk about Edvinsson's injuries. I thought Kasper played a pretty dang good game. So there are things of note to take away from this hockey game. But before we can get to any of that, I got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Scotty, it was just a double whammy for you today. Griffins got routed. Tigers dropped a massive egg, and Reese Olson got hurt. So your Tuesday's just off to a fantastic start.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I won't be in bed till like 1:30 because I have to talk about both. It's going to be a really fun night. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a blast. Well, let's get one of your two painful conversations out of the way. We'd start talking about the Grand Rapids Griffins, who fell 5-2 in Game 2 in Milwaukee. When it comes to difference makers in this hockey game, Scotty, you know, who you got as your difference maker?
That's a great question, to be completely honest with you. I still might, I honestly just run with special teams. And we've talked about the power play so much, but they did get the power play goal at the very end of the game to technically get on the board and score a power play goal. So maybe that's not as valid anymore, but this was all in all just I don't want to say sluggish because like they came out, I thought they, came out fine and were skating fine, but just there was no opportunity for them to get back in the game. Every time the ice was tilted, something would happen and momentum would shift. This was really just kind of a dud of a hockey game.
Yeah, we saw the Milwaukee Admirals we were promised going into the series, right? This is the first seeded Milwaukee Admirals, and they looked like it in this hockey game. And I agree with you. Special teams absolutely was a difference maker. It's one of the two things I have written down. Griffins had 5 power play opportunities in this hockey game, and they scored on one of them, and it was in garbage time, right? Like the score is 5-2, but don't let that
fool you. At least we know it's possible.
At least we know it's possible, sure. But like, don't let that fool you. It was 4-0 with 5 minutes to go, and they scored 2 late goals to make it close before they finished it off with an empty netter. Like, the special teams continues to just hurt this team. And that's where, and we'll talk about Nate Danielson later, but the addition of Nate Danielson to this roster, I don't want to put too much pressure on a kid making his pro debut in the playoffs, in the Calder Cup playoffs, but like, he could be such a boon for this team's power play because this power play is just flaccid, man. There's nothing behind it. It's just pass, zone clear, pass, zone clear. Like, it's crazy that this is supposedly the same system that's being run in Detroit because they're having such less success than they had in Detroit. And like, it's just so obvious. Like, and and the penalty kill did fine. They got scored on once, but so they went 3 for 4 overall. But we talked about it in the Rockford series. If Grand Rapids wants to make a deep run, you got to be able to start converting at special teams, especially if you want to beat a team like Milwaukee, which is one of the best in the American Hockey League. And just for they played 4 games in the first series. So for the 6th consecutive game, they've done basically nothing. Like, they had a power play goal in the first game on the empty net because it was on the power play with the empty net. And it doesn't mean anything. Like, the air quotes are coming out in full force already because it doesn't mean anything. So this special teams, man, it kills me. And then the other one I think is Yaroslav Askarov. He took the net back over from Grosnick after Grosnick got the start in Game 1. Grosnick finished the series really strong for the Admirals against the Texas Stars, so they ran it back with him. He got exposed by the Griffins, And so they decided to go back to their primary starter, their main guy in Askarov, who hadn't been very good in the playoffs up until this point. But he made big save after big save after big save. There were so many moments in this hockey game where I went, how did the Griffins not score? So many times the Griffins could have had momentum stoppers against the Admirals that were just, the door on that was shut by Yaroslav Askarov. So for me, he's my other difference maker in this hockey game.
Yeah. And that's, I completely agree with you for starters, but I mean, just looking at again, kind of what I alluded to, the momentum in the game, every single time the Griffins had even some sort of momentum, you get swiped down on a play like that. And Askarov, as we are very well aware, is one of the higher regarded goalie prospects out there, was obviously a really big name in his draft class, and you're seeing why. And you have, during the regular season, you saw why. And like you said, in the postseason, had a couple of bad games and lost the net there for a little bit. But back in prime form in this one. And I think, a lot of people are pretty over, at least on that side of town, pretty excited about what the future holds in net for when you see a performance like that.
I also want to loop back to the special teams because there was something we missed when we were talking about it, a pretty big one. They allowed a shorthanded goal to LaRue in this one as well, which is like, if you're not going to score on the power play, you really can't get scored on your power play. That one felt like watching the Red Wings. It felt like the Red Wings gave up a ton of shorthanded goals throughout the season.
That's the system we know.
Yeah, that's the system we're aware of. And LaRue, with just a Bush League move afterwards, taunting Sebastian Cossa, actually got a second minor, or got a minor after his goal for unsportsmanlike conduct. Griffins went to a 5-on-3 with an opportunity to respond and, again, get the momentum stopper after allowing a shorthanded goal to go down 3-0, and they couldn't convert on the 5-on-3 or the ensuing 5-on-4. So it's just like right there. Like, you want to talk about a moment that really killed any type of, and like the team continued to push. I'm not trying to say like after that the team just gave up, because they didn't. You saw them continue to try, but like, you want to talk about a moment in a hockey game where it just felt like, they're not going to win this game. It was that second period shorthanded goal leading to a 5-on-3 where you didn't score on that to get the answer goal back. It was just like, all right, well, this clearly is not their night. So, I mean, in terms of difference makers, I think that was their biggest difference maker. But you know what? Silver lining here, Scotty, and here I am coming with a silver lining. You went to Milwaukee and you stole a game against the number one seed. So now you come back home. The series is a wash, right? Or the first two games are even. And you have two back-to-back games in Grand Rapids. You take care of business at home where you have the home ice advantage. You now have the opportunity to not have to go back to Milwaukee because it's a 5-game series. You only need 3 to win. So just take care of business in Grand Rapids and you'll be square. Like, that's the silver lining here is it sucks that they lost, but let's not undersell how important it is that they did take that first game. You're not going to win every game of a playoff series, and getting one win on the road in the barn of the best team in the division is huge.
Yeah, taking game one is absolutely massive. And now, I mean, not just to repeat whatever you just said, but now you have an ability to come back home and really take advantage, and that'll be hopefully a pretty fun week.
Yeah, especially because we'll be there on Friday. So we let's hope for a series clinching victory. Scotty, let's take a quick break, head to segment 2, and when we come back, we'll talk about other notable performers from this game, and of course, we'll talk about Nate Danielson. So stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Talking about this 5-2 loss to the Milwaukee Admirals, Scotty, who are your notable performers? What stood out to you in this game that made you go, that was actually pretty nice, or on the other side of the coin, really bad.
Thank you for explaining what notable means.
You're welcome.
I need it sometimes, for real. I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier, so not to steal your thunder, but I do think Marco Kasper was kind of a standout in this game. And he was kind of the talk of the town. I mean, for a game in which, again, it was kind of relatively uncompetitive and they didn't really, didn't end up being a very close hockey game. Well, I guess the garbage time made it closer even than it was. But you get my point. I think a lot of people really noticed how well Marco Kasper did. And I think he deserves a lot of credit. We just talked about it, last week? Yeah, that makes sense. Last week, we talked about his 3-point night and how well-rounded his game has really been looking lately, and how, they're emphasizing the defensive side of the ice, but also how much he's producing and how honestly just like smooth he looks on the offensive side of the puck as well. So yeah, I think that he was a pretty easy standout in this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, most notably was, so in the first period, the Griffins had 3 penalties. They had 3 penalty kills in the first period, one of which they allowed a goal on. That was that shot off of Didier, which became a 2-0 lead. Well, shortly after that, they went to a 3rd penalty kill. But for some reason on that penalty kill, the Griffins provided a lot of offense. There was a kind of partial breakaway by Dominic Schein where he released a slap shot where he missed the net high on off the glass. But then you had 2 opportunities by Marco Kasper where he got behind the defense and was able to get in all alone, mostly in all alone on Askarov. The first one, Askarov made the stop. The second one, Hirose fed him the puck, just like a nice little floater. It was a little bit too far, so he had to chase it along the boards. And so a defender came to intercept him, and he made this beautiful move to cut inside on the defender and go all alone on Askarov. He beat Askarov, but just sent it wide. I mean, like moments like that. And then like later in the third period where he was just like, he had dropped the gloves and was about to fight, but the linesman got between them and was like separating them. Like, let him fight. Like we talked about it back in the Rockford series, but Kasper is doing a little bit of everything down there in the AHL in Grand Rapids. He's providing a little bit of skill and flair. You saw that. You're seeing that underrated skill that Yzerman was talking about on his draft night. You're seeing the fact that he can play responsible defensively as well, because that's what Yzerman drafted him for primarily, is that 200-foot game. You're also seeing that feistiness, and that's something that you and I weren't expecting when we tuned in for the AHL playoffs, that just eagerness to get into the scrappy parts of the game. And there's not a one thing from his game down there in Grand Rapids that I dislike. And so I don't know how close he is to the NHL level. That's not for me to decide. But, me as my dumb fan brain is like starting to go, I kind of want to see him sooner rather than later. Of course, again, that's for Yzerman to determine. But I'm liking what I see, even though he didn't get a goal in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that conversation is going to get hotter and hotter, I think, as the summer goes along. And I think, if we'll see what camp and what the preseason looks like, but I think there is a legitimate chance that we're having that conversation a little bit more seriously going into this fall. Obviously, free agency. We have a long off season ahead of us still, but I do think that is a conversation that's only going to get hotter. And if he keeps playing like this, it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Do you want to talk about Danielson now, making his pro debut?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We didn't even bring it up yesterday, but because that happened over the weekend, right? I think that decision was made. So Danielson now on the Griffins roster and making his professional North American debut in the postseason is pretty exciting. I think a lot of the fan base was very excited about that news. And I had no issues with how he looked. I didn't think he looked he looked bad out there.
No, I quite liked the few looks we got of him. Right away they put him on the third. They put him on the third line to center that. So now you have, Kasper, Berggren, and Danielson lines 1, 2, and 3, which is just fantastic to see. He was on a line with Soderblom as well. So you have the unicorn we love in Soderblom out there. But I liked what I saw out of him. For a guy who's coming to a new team just a few days after losing the championship in the WHL to join another team pursuing a championship.
Yeah.
He adjusted pretty well to the AHL, and let's not, that's still a really significant jump to go from major junior hockey to professional hockey to the AHL, which, again, let's not get it twisted. There's a huge, huge jump between the AHL and the NHL, right? We talk about it with Zarnik, right? How he looks very good in the AHL, and the NHL, he's like a forgettable, replaceable fourth liner. But there's just as big of a jump to go from major juniors to the American Hockey League. And Danielson, he looked, I would say, comfortable. I wouldn't say he wowed me, but he looked comfortable. He was engaging in corner battles. He was winning those corner battles. He had a couple of really good near interceptions. He had a couple of really good near scoring chances. But I think a lot of that will come with time, with just learning the team, learning his teammates, gaining that chemistry, as well as just, learning the scheme, right? Because now you're on a new team that I would assume runs a completely different play style. So I think it's going to take a few games, which is why I'm also I understand why they didn't, as much as I want him on the power play, because this power play is abysmal and he would help tremendously. We saw how much of an attribute he was to the Portland Winterhawks on the power play. I'm not in a rush to put him out there because it's going to take him time to acclimate to the American Hockey League, especially the playoffs. But I would like to see it at some point if this power play continues to struggle.
Yeah, for sure. And for as much as there's going to be probably some conversations about trying to get him more opportunities or people wanting to see him on the ice more or whatnot, this is the postseason. You know what I mean? I think they're not going to just throw him completely into the fire overnight, but we'll see. I do hope that he does stick in the lineup at a minimum and continue to get opportunities, which it looks like he will. I'm not sure why they would bring him over if he wouldn't. So yeah, I didn't have any problems with what we saw in this one. And I think that, to your point, I think the power play hopefully is an opportunity for him to shine, just because that's such an easy thing to point to and be like, well, what they're doing isn't working. So maybe get some new blood in there.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, Sebastian Cossa, I want to talk a little bit about him.
Sure.
Just like game 2 in the Rockford series, he had a rough one. I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw from Cossa in this hockey game. The one goal where I'm like, whatever, was the power play goal that was redirected off of Didier. Other than that, 2 of them were shots from the point. One, I know he never saw because it was through a screen. But in the LaRue shorthanded breakaway, just went 5-hole. The first shot was partial screen, 5-hole. They're just he wasn't his sharpest today. And I'm not freaking out about that by any stretch of the imagination. We just talked about it the other day. One bad performance by a young goaltender in the playoffs is not going to make me jump ship. We've seen Cossa have bad stretches and then adjust and be lights out. And we saw it last series too, right? He had a bad game in game 2 and then adjusted and was very strong to finish that series. But this was another one of those games where you're like, he had a bad game, and that does happen.
I agree. I don't have too much else to add. I think that's when you just kind of throw in the garbage and hopefully recover for the next game.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he was super sharp in this one.
Awesome. We're going to head to another quick break, and when we return, we will talk about Simon Edvinsson because he did not play in this hockey game. So stay tuned for that in segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, Simon Edvinsson did not play in game 2. He took a really hard hit in game 1. I don't know if you remember that. But because of that hard hit, he played through the rest of the game, but was very notably off. And then it came out today that he would not play because of an injury he sustained in game 1. It has not been confirmed to my knowledge that it was that hard hit, but looking back at highlights of the game, it's hard to find other instances when it could have been that, when it could have occurred, but that doesn't matter. The point being is he is day to day. And I feel like you really felt the lack of his presence on the back end in this hockey game in which the Griffins obviously lost 5-2. For
sure. Yeah. On really on both ends of the ice, to be honest, I think it was pretty felt, but at the end of the day, his health is the number one priority. You're not going to rush him or make him go out there. I'm sure he wants to be out there more than anybody, but you're not going to, especially with the trajectory that he is on, assuming that he's going to be a part of the Red Wings future, probably starting this fall. They're going to play that ultra safe. And even if that's, even if that causes the Griffins to slide or get eliminated this round or really struggle on the blue line, again, like you just said, we kind of saw the fruits of that in this game. They're not going to prioritize anything above his health. So
you really need him though if you want to make and obviously his health isn't the number one thing, but it's going to be really tough to make a push into the playoffs without,
for sure. Yeah, it's your
Simon
best
Edvinsson
player
on the back end. Yeah.
Wow.
Other than that, Carter Mazur scored again. They made a late push. They had several little pushes throughout the game where they put pressure on, and Askarov just shut him down, and then kind of fizzled out. But late in the game, they finally got on the board with the power play. Zarnik fed Mazur for the one-timer. Mazur scored. Mazur stays point per game. Zarnik stays point per game. Whoopee, I guess. Throw our hands up in the air. A couple minutes later, Dominic Shine scored to make it 4-2. So you make it. It makes you think that the game's closer than it really was. And then Jasper Weatherby, former Griffin himself, has played a short time with the Red Wings last season, or the Griffins rather last season, scored the empty net goal. So, I mean, really, in terms of this game, that's really what it was. It was kind of one of those games where it went. It's not like the level of poor we saw from the Red Wings at times this season, but it was poor enough that it's like, but really, how much are you going to really break down and talk about? They just got outplayed by the Milwaukee Admirals in this one, really.
Yeah, they just got they got pumped like that, and it happens. And like you said, I think the biggest takeaway is honestly that they took one of these first two. I think is huge, and at least gives you some optimism that they can make some noise the rest of the series. Because if it was down, 2-0, I think most people would probably view it as being wraps already. So yeah, it's. Yeah, they got pumped. It
happens. Let's see. The other thing I really got on the docket for today is the fact that Lucas Raymond, the Team Sweden, played France, and Lucas Raymond scored yet again. He continues to be just, a clutch player. That's where
Did you see the goal?
The Raymond goal?
Yeah.
It's a slick wrister. Yeah.
That was slick, man.
He's got a secretly good shot, man.
That boy nice.
He's pinpoint accurate with that wrister, which is why we were saying early in the season, shoot the puck.
Right. Yeah. Really, I was saying, man, you remember that era? It was really not.
Dude, all the times he would pass the puck from the slot with a high danger scoring chance was
not fun.
No.
We were straight up not having a good time. Yeah, no, it was also their sweaters are just so incredible.
Oh, Sweden?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crispy.
Always have thought that.
Crispy.
Other than that, I mean, we're done with Red Wing stuff for the day. I mean, if you want, we could riff about NHL playoffs, or we could just sign off. Up to you, buddy.
I mean, right now, I guess, honestly, we can sign off so I can go watch the third period of this Oilers game. We're recording right here. It was 3-0 going into second intermission, and we hopped on air to try to crank it out. So, yeah, I mean, if Edmonton holds on, they've blown a lot of games this year, so we'll see. But if they hold on, I think that Edmonton versus Dallas would be an absolutely incredible Western Conference final. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't want Canada to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
I love that trend, but I also don't want Jamie Benn to win a Stanley Cup.
So I feel that, but also in August on this show, my preseason cup pick was the Stars. So for the sake of trying to sound smart, I really need Dallas to take this home.
And the only team I dislike, or the only player on Dallas I really actively dislike, is Jamie Benn. Like Joe Pavelski, I love that story. Yeah. Jake Ottinger's easy to root for. Rupe Hintz. What's the other guy? The other defense.
Robinson,
Heiskanen. Like they have a lot of players. The new guy, the young kids that they just brought up, Stan Coven, Wyatt Johnson. Like they have a lot of players that it's super easy to root for. But because Jamie Benn's on that team, I'm like, I can't do it. Like, I feel like it would just be a betrayal of my Red Wings fandom to root for the Dallas Stars. So
you're right. That's kind of fair. I feel like I said Robinson, by the way. His name's obviously Robertson.
It's fine. We get it.
11:30 at night, and I have another show to do.
Well, and on the flip side of that, like, I don't want Canada to win a Stanley Cup again because that's just fun. But like at the same time, McDavid really deserves a Stanley Cup, and so does Draisaitl. So it's like it would be a crime, and I don't think they ever. I think at some point McDavid will. He's too good of a player not to win the Stanley Cup. At some point in his career, he might just be like one of those guys who it's like,
how funny would it be though?
He'll win like 4 when he's after 30 all of a sudden. But if they were to win the Stanley Cup, I'd be like, dang, the Canadian teams finally won a Stanley Cup for the first time since the 90s. But hey, at least it was Connor McDavid lifting the cup. But on the Eastern Conference side, like, boo Panthers, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Are you going to root for the Rangers?
Yeah. They're more likable. I'm fine with that. You know, of the original 6 teams, they have the fewest Stanley Cups. We can throw them one. It's like a pity cup.
No. I'm good on that.
I have no ill feelings towards the Rangers. I honestly don't.
Really?
Yeah. I like their unis, but I mean, the original 6 teams, so of course I do.
Of the original 6, they are probably one of the more likable ones, but I don't like actively like them either.
I think it's because they're in the Metro and not in the Atlantic.
Yeah, that helps for sure.
It was like all the Atlantic Division teams, and like I was rooting against Carolina because I hate Carolina's play style. I'm just like I can't watch that team in the Cup final. Are you kidding me? Like that's just their style is so boring.
It's
a
bunch of jerks, baby.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. There's my feelings on the
Stars. If it is Oilers, again, I'm not trying to jump the gun too much here because the Edmonton has a history here, but that series should be high powered and fun, man. Robertson and McDavid, Draisaitl all on the ice at the same time will be really cool.
Yeah, and if the Canucks can mount a comeback here in the third period
and give Pickard a start, let's go. Let's give Red Wings lore here. Let's give Captain Picard, if you will, a little head nod here in the Western Conference Finals. Why not?
I wouldn't mind Canucks, honestly. I mean, again, a Canadian team thing, but Phil Pronik had a good season with Quinn Hughes. Pius Suter. Oh, dude, I wanted Pius Suter to stay around. Yeah, I liked Pius Suter's game a lot.
We had a Pius Suter extension episode. I feel like.
I think we did a Who Stays Who Goes, and we talked about keeping Pius Suter in like a third, fourth, basically a Christian Fischer role, but at center.
Right. You watch those games, man. They're saying Suter quite a bit. He's out there making stuff happen.
Hronek's going to get paid too. I don't know who's going to pay him, but pairing him up with Quinn Hughes was just exactly what he needed to explode offensively. I think he's people are going to be like, oh, we shouldn't have traded him. Like, let's be honest. He's playing with Quinn Hughes. Of course, his numbers are definitely inflated.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's good. It was a smart trade because we weren't going to pay him what he was going to ask for.
Yeah.
But I mean, that team's fun. So just not Dallas and not Florida, I guess, is in the really the two that I really don't want to win.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm pulling for the Stars just because I want to sound smarter than I am.
That's really hard for you to do.
That's why I'm rooting for him, dude. Yeah, I know.
All right. We successfully have milked a couple extra minutes off of this when we didn't need to. We'll sign off so we can both go watch the end of this hockey game. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. You got any final thoughts?
We ball, baby.
We ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Same time, same place. Your team every day.
Every day.